People often assume estrangement begins with one terrible moment. In my experience, it usually begins with smaller ones: disappointments, misunderstandings, words spoken at the wrong time, silences that last longer than intended. Years later, nobody remembers exactly where the distance started. They only notice how far apart they've become. That was the situation between my daughter and me when she graduated from college. I wasn't invited, not forgotten, not overlooked. Explicitly not invited. The message had been polite, clear, final. She wanted certain people there. I wasn't one of them. I told her I understood. Then I spent 3 nights staring at my kitchen ceiling, wondering whether I actually did. The morning of the ceremony, I made a decision that still embarrasses me slightly. I drove to campus anyway, not to attend, not to interfere, just to be nearby. I parked across the street where I could see families arriving. Parents carried flowers, grandparents adjusted folding chairs, graduates posed for photographs before disappearing into the crowd. I remained inside my car, watching, waiting, trying to convince myself that being close was somehow different from being present. It wasn't. But I stayed. From where I sat, I could see part of the outdoor seating area, rows of chairs stretched across the lawn, most filled quickly. One remained empty longer than the others. I noticed it only because everyone around it seemed connected, families talking, taking pictures, saving places for relatives. That chair remained vacant. Eventually, a woman approached with an older gentleman beside her. They spoke briefly with an event volunteer. A moment later, the older man was guided toward the empty seat. He sat down carefully, completely unaware of the significance I had assigned to the chair. The ceremony began, names were called, speeches were delivered. Applause rolled across the crowd in waves. Then my daughter crossed the stage. Even from a distance, I recognized her instantly. Pride arrived first, then sadness, then something harder to name, because she looked happy and because she looked alone. Not physically alone, emotionally. The kind of loneliness that sometimes survives even inside a crowd. The ceremony ended. Families rushed together. Photographs started. Graduates disappeared into clusters of celebration. I started my car. Time to leave. Then my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. The caller introduced herself as an event coordinator. Apparently, there had been confusion involving a photograph. At first, I thought she had the wrong person. Then she explained the older gentleman who had occupied the empty chair had spoken with university staff after the ceremony. During their conversation, he learned that one graduate had spent most of the event without family nearby, not entirely alone, but noticeably separate. Something about that bothered him. Before leaving, he had asked a volunteer to take a photograph of the graduate receiving her diploma. Later, through an unexpected chain of conversations, the coordinator learned my name and my connection. The explanation sounded absurd, yet somehow it had happened. The coordinator emailed me the photograph that evening. I stared at it for a long time. My daughter stood smiling, diploma in hand, sunlight catching the edge of her graduation gown, a beautiful picture. A painful one. Then I noticed something written beneath it. The stranger had attached a short note, not advice, not judgment, just an observation. She looked toward the crowd more than once. That was all, one sentence. Nothing dramatic, nothing certain, yet it unsettled me. Because it challenged a story I had been telling myself, that my absence no longer mattered. Months passed. The photograph remained in a drawer. Then another unexpected thing happened. My daughter contacted me, not because of the picture, at least not directly. Someone from the university had eventually mentioned the encounter. The stranger, the photograph, the confusion, the fact that someone had cared enough to notice. Our first conversation was awkward, careful, incomplete. Neither of us apologized immediately. Neither of us pretended the past had disappeared. But for the first time in years, we discussed something other than our disagreements. We discussed that day, what we remembered, what we assumed, what we never said. Today, I still keep the photograph, not because it healed anything. Families aren't repaired by a single conversation, certainly not by a stranger. What that man gave us wasn't reconciliation, it was something smaller, and perhaps more important. A witness, someone with no agenda, no history, no side to defend, just enough distance to see what both of us had missed. The chair had been empty for only a few minutes. The consequences lasted much longer. And sometimes that's how change begins, not with certainty, with a question neither person can ignore anymore.